Tales of the Legion Project podcast, our first Legion issues.
If it's not around the house, it's just around the corner at your 7-Eleven store.
Welcome to the 12th episode of this Tales of the Legion Project podcast. I am your host, Eric.
And I'm Peter.
And Peter and I are here after a very long start and stop of this introduction that you did not hear yet, or maybe not at all, to talk about our first Legion of Superhero comics.
This was an idea to just look at our issues and go, well, first of all, read each other's first issues and maybe answer some questions like, wow, why did this turn you into a Legion fan? What things did you learn? You know, what could you have learned about the Legion for this issue? All kinds of topics. This can go many, many different places.
Yeah. It's going to be probably a little freer form.
Mm-hmm.
I am all. I was just telling Peter as we got started. I'm all sorts of tongue tied. So if that follows through in the episode, folks, I apologize. But this is going to be. I think it'll be a fun. Well, that's what I was trying to say. A fun, free form kind of conversation.
Yeah, I wonder if we touched on any of these issues when we did your Legion episode in Longbox Review many, many years ago.
That is a very good question.
Yeah, I'm sure we probably mentioned issues.
Our first? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I know we didn't go in depth, but we certainly mentioned them.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I that's what I remember you telling me before we were going to do this particular topic, what your first Legion issue was, but I couldn't remember if that was just through our, I'll say normal conversation back and forth, or if it was, I had totally forgotten that we probably did talk about it in that one Spotlight Legion episode that I did.
Yeah. Maybe
this will be fun.
Maybe even in the first episode of our very own Legion project.
Of course.
I'm sure we mentioned these issues. And I know that I've certainly mentioned my fondness for the Legion Academy because of my first issue. And I know you've mentioned a few times about the League, the League of Super Assassins. And, so it's come up. So this is why we made this notion to do. Let's just do it. We're not one of those Legion podcasts that went back all the way to the very, very beginning of the Legion, which allows us to jump to wherever we want to prior to the Baxter run, which is a lot of fun. If it means something to, when we read the Universo project, we went back and looked at Universo's first appearance, and now we get to do an episode like this where we are jumping to two very different eras of the Legion of Superheroes to be able to talk about them. So a lot of fun.
Should we tell the listeners what these issues are?
Go ahead. Let's go. What was your first Legion issue?
So my first Legion issue is, and I want to show Peter here on the video because I don't know if you can see this, Peter. You see how dog-eared and wrinkled that cover is? Yeah. So this is Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, number 254. Which had an August 1979 cover date, if I am to believe my sources here.
What the heck? I thought I wrote down when that came out.
I have May 24th, 1979.
Right, as the on sale date. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. How old were you at that point? Or if you want to just give a roundabout age.
79. So I was 10. I would turn 11 at the end of that year.
Perfect time to read a Legion comic, right?
Yeah.
My first issue is Legion of Superheroes, just the Legion of Superheroes, issue 304 from cover date of October of 1983, so 3 months prior to that, June or July or whatever. Here's my copy. I have mine's actually in very good shape.
Yeah, I have mine too.
Yeah. My first, you have the comic store one, or
the direct
market one. Yeah, I have.
You have a newsstand.
The newsstand one. Yeah.
Wait,
which? So do you have the Whitman?
No.
One for yours, the one that does.
Nope, it's just the regular.
Yeah, because mine doesn't even have the issue number on the front.
Real the Whitman one doesn't have an issue
Nope.
number?
Nope.
How bizarre.
Yep. You have to, I guess maybe because they just wanted to sell it as, like an issue,
Just
right?
whatever. Right.
Yeah.
What That's crazy. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, but for this particular issue to sell it as a one-off is ridiculous.
Right. Because it's a two-parter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it came in. Did they come in packs? Like, why do I have this? I don't know if I have it as a if I bought
That's a
it
good
as
question.
a back issue
Mm-hmm.
or what.
Or
Yeah,
was it a 3-pack? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. There are, I don't remember what they are now, but I did acquire a few of the issues in my collection, not necessarily Legion issues, um, through those 3-packs. But what I don't remember is if those 3-packs were Whitman comics or not.
Mm.
So maybe some of the listeners out there have a better knowledge, have more knowledge about this, and could let
Yeah.
us know, because now I'm really curious.
I mean, it was frustrating. I have a few Superboy and the Legion comics that are Whitman, and it's frustrating because as I go through, now it's not so bad because I have a straight run from 200 all the way, I think from 200. Wait, I might be lying about that. But anyway, yeah, I might have a few holes. I don't remember. Anyway, when they don't have the issue, you're sort of flipping through, you're always like, oh, I don't know what issue number that is, It's so frustrating.
Or maybe you thought you had an issue and you didn't, because there was this gap at one point.
Because who knows, right? By the way, if my issue 304 came out in July of '83, I also was 10 years old, going on 11.
How bizarre.
Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting.
And isn't that, don't they say that kind of generally about comics, is like, you're 10 years old when you start, and that's your golden age of comic books, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Where did you buy your issue?
That I could not tell you, but I could guess, because when I was 10, just getting into comic books, because I had just started collecting, well, falling in love with, I'll say, and then starting to buy as many issues as I could afford.
Mm-hmm.
Just this is 79, right? So the September before that, so September 78 is when I got into comics. That's the time that I consider it, because that's when I bought those first 3, the couple Spider-Man issues and that Avengers issue, and I've talked about those on my show a few times now. And then of course it just ballooned out into all sorts of things. But I very early on started gravitating towards DC. And of course, not even a year later, less than 5, 6, 7 months, a little more than half a year later, I'm getting into Legion and all sorts of other things too. So anyway, to answer your question, like I said, there weren't too many places in my hometown that had comic books, at least that I could go to, being 10. Although back then, my parents basically let me roam around town as long as I was back before dark for dinner.
Yep.
So there was a drugstore that had some comics. I don't think it was that one. There was another grocery store several blocks away from my house. That is likely where I got this.
Okay.
What about you?
Mine came from a mom and pop corner market store, counter deli. Like, it had everything. When you went to the front counter, some years it had the ice cream machine right there, that you opened the container and could reach in. Other years that was, in the back. But the rack of comics was right there as soon as you opened up the door. This is in Reading, PA, and this particular store was called Sam's. The gentleman who owned it was Sam's, and his wife used to work. I was so afraid of her. She was like, she was scary. Sam was cool. She was scary, but she loved us. She loved the kids. But that store was a block down from where I lived.
Oh, nice.
So it was on the way to school, my grade school. It was down near where friends were. there was a giant playground area. Uh, um, so if you looked out my backyard, I was on like my backyard was like on one of those half streets. Um, um, if I lived on kind of like a half street, like it literally was like only 1 block long. That's it, at
Hmm.
least in this vicinity. And then you could drive up. It was a one way, and you can drive back around to the back to go to the main road, and that's where like this playground was, right? And it was this giant playground, just giant, just had everything, basketball courts and those pool poles, those water poles that shot out water, during the summer, and jungle gyms, all that kind of stuff. So being at the playground with friends, it's a block away. It's a no-brainer. Comics. It's like, because I was already reading comics, obviously, by this point, as you were. And I would go down there with money that I had or money that I stole and just buy some candy, buy some candy and buy some comics. So yeah, it was from Sam's, and they knew I was into comics really badly. The spinner rack would only have the regular priced comics, and if they had annuals, they would put those, like, you had to ask for them.
Really?
Yeah, behind. And I would say, do you have any expensive comics? Or I don't know what I would call them. And they would say, yeah, and that's how my fix, man. Sam's was my fix for a long time because Golden Eagle didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if Golden Eagle did. I don't know. The other comic store that was in Reading before I ever went to Golden Eagle was called Hildebrand's. I don't know if that existed. And to your point about, disappearing and coming back before the sun went down, the best story I have about that is traveling to inner city Reading, which is only like maybe two miles from where I lived. But as a kid, 2 miles is a lot.
Oh yeah.
Rode the bus in, rode the bus back, took the wrong bus, wound
Oh,
up at the bus station, the last stop, way, way, way far from where I lived, and had to run with my comics to my aunt's house, and then from my aunt's house to my house. I probably traveled like 5 to 7 miles. I don't even know. It was a crazy amount, but yeah. So I know that feeling, growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, where you just, there I was hiding comics in my shirt because I didn't want anybody to know that I bought them, running around the city because I'm in a whole other part of town. Crazy.
wow.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, you already answered this, but I was going to ask you, was it actually a spinner rack?
Mm-hmm.
And where, the grocery store that I mentioned, there was no spinner rack. I didn't see a spinner rack until I think I went into like a 7-Eleven. Are you familiar with those?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we have those.
Okay. And yeah, so that was the first time I think I'd seen one of those. But so they would put their comics on this big, massive magazine
Yeah.
shelf. And I remember my friends and I would go there, and they would just, I don't know what the policy was, but they would just pile these comics in these shelves, and they're like I would say like 6 inches thick of comics right next to each other. And so we would just kind of quickly with our fingers, just kind of breeze through them to see which issues they had. And then we just pick out the ones we want.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, man, I miss that place.
Yeah. I mean, those,
Even though now it would drive me crazy because of all the bends in the comic spines and whatnot. But
you're ruining the values for other people, or actually, upping the value for people who actually had nice copies. Yeah, I mean, between the corner store, inner city Reading had a newsstand vendor place. Like it was actually like you had to walk in. It was like almost like a storefront news vendor, which was right near where the Reading newspaper actually was. I guess maybe it was even attached to it. I don't know. And they had the same thing where it was more of a rack of magazines and newspapers, and then the comics were on there. So I would buy comics from there. There were always drugstores. There was one near my junior high. There was one, in other parts of Reading. And it was always fun when you walked into a new place and you were like, like my stepdad's family lived in Robizonia, and which is like outside of Reading. And there was like that one, maybe it was a Turkey Hill. I don't know what it was. At that, it was a Turkey Hill at the one stoplight in Robisonia at the time. And they had the same thing. You walk in, just like a 7-Eleven. It wasn't a rack, but they had the magazine thing, and there was comics. That's where I picked up like the first Crisis issue and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And some Who's Who, you know. So I was always on the lookout.
Yeah.
Nowadays we have GPS, right? Like you can just go into Google Maps and whatever.
Yeah.
And everywhere when I'm somewhere new, I'm like, where's the nearest comic store?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, whenever I would travel, in fact, my best friend Travis, whom I grew up with, and you know, we were both big comic fans. I went on a trip with him from where we live in Idaho, driving across country to Wisconsin, and every town that we stopped in and spent time in, we were looking. Well, once we got to the hotel, and this is how I would do this until, of course, we got Google and all that stuff and phones, so that we could do what you said. But I would, every time I'd travel anywhere, I would open up the phone book and go to the yellow pages and look for bookstores. Sometimes, you know, in a bigger city, there would actually be like comic shops eventually listed,
Right.
you know, separately. So I would do that, and then try to visit those places as much as possible.
Nice. Now, do you have a distinction between your first Legion comic and when you started collecting Legion?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So Superboy and the Legion 254 is my first Legion comic book that I ever bought and read. But I didn't start collecting or, you know, getting the issues month to month until issue Legion of Superheroes 275.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know, you know, because oh boy, I know there was one more issue. Now I've forgotten which one it was. There was one more issue between 254 and 275. It was 267 that I picked up, and I don't know. Those are the only, or that's the only one between those two that I can recall specifically. There might be others. I kind of think there weren't. But where I was able to get my comics, it was a crapshoot. If you had one issue to the next issue to the next issue,
right?
And I think that was the problem, was that I just wasn't going at the right time, or they weren't getting the issues. I don't know what, but when I got issue 275. I realized, I want to see what happened. I really want to see what happens next. I've read a couple of these issues. I like these characters. And then for some reason, I was able to find, I guess, 276, 277. And then we're getting into George Perez drawn covers, the Reflecto saga, which is one of my very favorite storylines from my early Legion reading. And, you know, and then I just went until, continued on through what we're talking about in the main Legion project, you know, into the 5 year later. And then that's when things start to break down a little bit, but
right. Yeah, it's funny. I'm sort of the opposite. Like I consider this my first Legion comic because it's the one that I bought, right? It's the one I bought as a kid when I was starting my comic book collecting, I should say. Because I have, but this is my memory I don't know. My memory is not good because these were, you know, I was young. So your first issue is 254. In my collection, I have 255, 256. I mean, I have all of them, but these are the ones that I remember owning possibly before this 304, and 258. Again, I don't know if it's because it was a Whitman pack, but what I don't know is if they were given to me by my uncle or if they were purchased for me later by somebody. I think even like my stepdad's mom, I do know, I'm fairly certain she was the one who got me Legion of Superheroes 259, which is when it switches over to the Legion title without Superboy. Because it even has like a sticker on it from like Woolworths or, you know, like a department store. Like they actually slapped a price tag on it, right?
I hated that when I had one of those. Oh.
so did I get those from my uncle? I don't know, but I remember reading some, and I remember reading the one Infinite Man issue,
Mm.
um, because it didn't have a cover, so I know that that came from my uncle. But I really just say Legion of Superheroes 304 because that's when I started collecting that title.
Isn't so 250? You mentioned 255. Isn't that the one where they go back in time to before Krypton exploded?
Yep.
Oh, so I forgot about that. I actually did get 255 about the time that it came out after I got 254.
Hmm.
And uh and then it was what I say 267 and then 275. So yeah, definitely there was a couple in there in between there. I think that's what it was. Is like, oh, 254, I get this comic. I love it. I want to read more about this Legion of Superheroes. And then the next time I go, I find 255s. Oh, wait, wow. Okay. Here's the second one. And then I'm sure the next time I went, and then obviously for the next several months, I couldn't find any
Oh,
until 267, and then
right.
again for another 6 issues I can't find anything.
Right. Yeah, and it didn't take long once I did find a comic book store, whether it was Hildebrand's or Golden Eagle. Once I found out what back issues were, that was
Oh
it,
yeah, yeah.
Between this and Titans, I mean, I had to get every Legion that I could get my hands on.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Why don't we go to the actual issues, starting with we're going to start with Eric's first pick or first comic, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, issue number, what did we say, 254?
Yep.
And as we mentioned, we both read each other's, and it's just a way to get into the minds of maybe the other person or whatever. So let's start with your issue. I will give a brief synopsis. And basically, as we talked about before, this is the second part of a two-parter. And the story is entitled A Madman Shall Lead Them. Jerry Conway, Joe Staton, Dave Hunt, Gene D'Angelo, Todd Klein, edited by Jack C. Harris, with a cover by Dick Giordano. Featuring the Legion of Superheroes, Superboy, Brainiac 5, a few others that we see in a random scene, and a few more that are on the cover that are in suspended animation for most of the story. But really, it's and it's a battle against the League of Super Assassins, who I assume first appeared in the previous issue. Characters like Lazon, Mistmaster, Nutrax, Silver Slasher, Titania, Block.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's a lot of mention of a character known as Darkman, but doesn't show up in this particular issue. So it's a Legion of Superheroes issue featuring Superboy and battling the League of Super Assassins, but really, it's an issue about the Legion of Substitute Heroes as well, which was a nice twist as I read it. I was like, oh, cool.
And now you understand why I have such a soft spot for that team.
That definitely a topic of conversation. So the whole thing is Superboy is in the 31st century. I guess it's taking place right after last issue. He comes across Brainiac 5, who's basically in a hospital, because he must have been driven mad shortly prior to this issue, I guess, right? That's he's in one of his mad spells at this point.
I think it was post Omega.
Yeah. Or because of they talked about like the headquarters got messed up and there's destroyed one of the cruisers and they're broke. So Superboy gets attacked by Lazon. He gets put into suspended animation, but Brainy kind of figures there might be something else going on. So in his madness, he manages to be allowed to leave this hospital situation as long as he's escorted, so they can make sure he's not going to do anything crazy. And he comes to the old Legion clubhouse where the substitute Legionnaires are being headquartered. And I love that the first time we see them, Polar Boy's trying to like train them in tactics, right? He's trying to run them, trying to drill them into a team. Love that. There's so much in this issue that speaks to so many things, even some of the issues that we're reading as well. So Brainy lays out his plan. They have to save all these suspended animated Legionnaires, and he says the only way we can do that is if we confront the League of Super Assassins, which they do, and basically wipe the floor with them, which is
Right?
awesome. In this battle that is all just a bunch of 9-panel grids on the page, which I also thought was cool.
I haven't even noticed that.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as they get to the battle, it's all 9-panel grids. Except for the one. It's actually divided a little bit more, but it's still kind of a 9-panel grid.
See, this is where Ballin got it.
Yeah. Ballin or
sorry. Gibbons.
Yeah. And then it ends up the ending is really Silver Agey. That was the part that I was like, they kind of revert. It reverts to form when they get to the end. And it ends with them waking up the suspended animated Legionnaires and Superboy thinking about how they really should do something to help Brainy in his madness. There's one little scene that's kind of like a tangent where some of the other Legionnaires go to R.J. Brand to say, hey, we're broke. And he turns around and says, oh, yeah, so am I. So I don't know what becomes of that. I've talked many a times that I have a bunch of Legion holes. This is the first time I've ever read this comic. So
Oh, wow.
Yep. So I have no idea, the lead up other than the issues that I might have had especially the ones after. And it's also in an era that, is this an era, right? Or are we between eras? Because the letter column talks about how Paul Levitz just left, but we know that Paul Levitz comes back.
Yeah, he had just left his first Legion run, which was, it was obviously much shorter than after he came back.
Right. And art wise, it's Joe Staton, who I don't, is he on for long? Are we coming up on? We're out of obviously Mike Grell and all that, so I don't know where we're heading. This feels like almost like an interim issue in some ways, art wise. However, I really enjoyed the story for it being a 2-parter, for it being a second parter. When we get into that Legion of Substitute Heroes stuff, I was like, 5 years later, totally ripped this issue off. That battle is exactly the way they do it in the 5 years later, where you don't actually see the subs, you just see their powers, and they just go in. It's a good thing they were, Polar Boy was running them through those tactics. They just totally just win the day. It's so interesting. It was such an interesting battle. So everything up until the ending, the last couple pages where it reverts to like a Silver Age kind of wrap up, I really enjoyed the story. I liked that Jerry Conway, who I think I've said this in not to name drop, but when we interviewed Jerry Conway on CGS, I realized that Jerry Conway is really responsible for a lot of my early DC reading. No matter how strong Wolfman was because of New Teen Titans, Jerry Conway was on a lot of comics that I read. So I really appreciated how he opened the story with a lot of narration, not a lot of thought bubbles. It's that type of writing that fell out of style once the crisis sort of hit, where it's really narrative heavy. Sometimes they even, in the narration, they'll say, Superboy, what did you learn? Because of that, what did you learn, Superboy? What are you going to do? It's like they talk to the characters. There's a lot of drama to it. There's a lot of, I don't know what the style is. But it's not just Silver Age dialogue, right? Where everybody's angsty and
Hmm.
agitated and whatever. I just really liked it.
I would say it's it's the Bronze Age version of that. I
Yeah.
mean, because to be fair, I just flipped to a random page here as you were talking, and the narration box says, and this is talking about Superboy. Superboy falls as lifeless as the rubble which receives him, and we see that in the panel, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so Conway is using a bit of overreaching direction, I guess, just to ensure that we understand what's going on here. Not
Right.
who knows how that got. Did he write this after, or did he just turn this script into Staten and they didn't change anything afterwards, right? So
Yeah.
so but to your point, it's not like that Silver Age stuff.
Right.
And I'm vaguely recalling now some other things I read of Jerry Conway's around this same time, and he has that
Hmm.
that this is his style.
Yeah.
So at least he's consistent.
Like in the opening, the second page where Superboy's walking into the hospital, like it's it's clear what's going on, but he adds, like, to your point, where he's embellishing the artwork, right? It's not just total narration where he says silent, grim-faced, Superboy strides past the guards and sensors which surround the central hospital on this island of hospitals. And when they challenge him in their mechanical or bewildered fashion, he ignores them, heading unerringly to his goal, an isolated chamber on the uppermost floor of the highest tower. And I love the next one. A word to the guard, a flashing of his Legion ID, and the young man enters the chamber, there to confront, and then he speaks. Brainiac 5. Like, you
Yeah.
don't need all that, but
Nope.
I was like, oh, that's cool. I like
Yeah,
this.
it gives you some background.
Atmosphere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very not very. It's sort of 1970s film, gritty, not gritty, but it's kind of like that quality of filmmaking that we got
Hmm.
in the 70s where it's just kind of stylish.
Yeah. Totally stylish, and it makes it that it's not like a teen romp. Superboy's
Right.
not coming
Yeah,
in like,
there's some gravity to it.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not your Silver Age hijinks Legion. It's
right.
poor Brainiac 5, a distinguished member of the team, is in a mental institution.
Yeah.
But the situation is so grave that the most powerful Legionnaire and the one who inspired the entire team has to come to him in his current state for his help. And then things go really bad
I
for a
learned some
while.
I learned some things, right? Like Lazon attacks Superboy shortly right after that scene, and again the narration helps us learn about his powers. I did not know that, at least in this first couple of appearances, that he can control the spectrum of his abilities.
Hmm.
So right away I'm like, okay, what can he do with the Rainbow Lantern stuff, right? Like, is he another one of those characters like Color Kid, like who is another one that like Halo, could they
Mm-hmm.
all affect this thing? You could retcon that in. Now it's a little odd that, if he is that kind of powered, why didn't Jerry Conway connect him with Color Kid in the battle at the end?
Right. I
Like,
was
why
just thinking the
wasn't
same thing.
Yeah. So sure, there's going to be missed opportunities. Some people would call them plot holes, but that's not what a plot hole is. Learn what a plot hole is. It's just a missed opportunity, right? But still, I was all about that scene. What was another thing that I really liked? Joe Staten is one of those artists that I am more familiar with some of his later work, like in the 80s, where he gets a little more stretched and a little more, his
Hmm.
anatomy gets, he's not worried so much about anatomy, realistic anatomy. But there was some stuff in here that I was like, okay, I like that. I liked his design for the hospital guard that is the hospital escort, the one that looks like almost like Tobias Whale almost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like that. I liked his design for that. Um, I liked his battle sequence, as I mentioned. I really liked the battle sequence a lot, and I think that Giffen, in some ways, owes some of his artwork to some of the panels that I saw here, like that close up of Block with the eye
Oh yeah.
on page 14. I was like, look, that's a Giffen panel, man. Um, so the artwork was fairly decent. The thing I didn't like about the wrap up was the whole thing of Superboy going, okay, we have these suspended animated Legion members. He gets put into suspended animation, or they think he's dead, but he puts himself into suspended animation while he's battling Lazon. Brainiac 5 finds out, is the one that, susses this all out. And then he's like, yeah, I did that to myself. And I did it to the other Legionnaires too. They weren't really dead. And Lightlass is like, he says, I couldn't really fill you in because I have to go battle the villains. And they're like, oh, that's okay, Superboy. We understand. It's like, oh yeah, okay, thanks, Superboy, for making us dead while you go, so that whole silvering aspect of it, I was like, that's a poor way to
Well,
end.
not to mention the whole thing about all of them having gone to these the dance halls or whatever it was,
Yes,
where the exact chemicals that would require them to be able to be put into suspended animation, because they're bathed with X-rays, a la Superboy. I mean, that's just
it's a lot.
a lot of convenience.
I love the fact that they're going raving. I love that.
Oh yeah,
they
yeah,
basically were out partying.
Yeah.
And that in the future, when you go to these places, just random chemicals are in the air so that you can hallucinate and you can, be underwater. The future sounds amazing.
Right?
So they basically tripped. They were tripping,
Mm-hmm.
to some degree. So, it is the future. They're probably a little more cool with their drugs, their chemicals. So, yeah, that was a little... Because when they first mentioned that, when Superboy's like, or no, Brainiac 5 says, yeah, he put himself under because he has an unknown compound in his blood. I was like, where the hell did that come from? Was that from last issue? But then you find out later on, and they're like, oh, okay. Well, at least they came back to it, but it was a little wild for my taste.
Well, and since we're talking about this part of it, the League of Super Assassins almost pulled it off. If it hadn't have been for Superboy lagging behind a little bit, right? Or no, he wanted to has something to do with Colossal Boy, so he came back or whatever, and he just happened to see what this whole assassination attempt start, and then he reacted with the whole, hey, well, I guess I'll shoot my X-rays at them, and somehow that puts them in suspended animation. But so they could have won. It could have happened.
That's another part of the explanation where I was kind of like, where Superboy's like, I'm gonna go see Brainiac 5, and then he goes, oh, maybe Colossal Boy wants to come with
Yeah,
you.
that's right. Mm-hmm.
I was like, why just Colossal Boy?
Right.
Why not all of them? It was like so random. Okay, I was like, whatever. No, yeah, those kind of things. It's definitely not the best Legion story, obviously.
Oh no.
But through the lens of our topic, I quite enjoyed it, and was, like I said, surprised about the subs thing. And I have a few more notes about specifically like putting myself like in a 10-year-old mindset. I have a few more notes about that aspect too. But was there anything else about the issue or the story or anything that spoke to you about it, rereading it now all this time?
Well, I was when I was rereading it, I was trying to think I was trying to put my mind in my younger self, right? It's like, why did I buy this issue? What grabbed me about this? And of course, it's that the first thing is the cover with the Dick Giordano cover, which God, I love. I loved when he did covers. And Superboy here is in this what looks to me like an ice coffin. which is not represented inside the issue, but the Legionnaires are put in sort of these coffin-like, see-through coffin-like things that Brainiac 5 puts him in. So, it's just the mystery of, hey, here's Superboy, which is obviously at this time is the only character I know from this cover. And so
Right.
Superboy is possibly dead, and there's these other characters like him in this, and you got these characters standing on this tiny planetoid with Block, like, half the mass of that thing. I'm like, what is this? That's weird. It's just so weird looking. And then of course when I read it, just the whole idea of these other characters besides the ones that I'm seeing on the front cover being spotlighted, and why is Brainy crazy? Because I hadn't read all that stuff before, and like I said earlier, this is my first encounter with the subs, and
Mhm.
they saved the day.
Mhm.
Obviously for Brainy's plan, but they saved the day. If it wasn't for them, things would have turned out a lot differently. Which is why, Peter, I will never forgive Giffen for that sub special.
Yeah, they really come off quite well in this issue. So I totally can understand if this is your first exposure to the subs, you're like, well, they're highly competent. I mean, they totally wrecked. And I loved, like, when Titania was having basically a meltdown because she's like, I can't fight anybody. I don't see any. She's going mad in that one panel. And she's like, there's nobody to
she's
hit.
Panicking, yeah.
Yeah.
Lazon panics too. And then get this great, I mean, it's a little purple prosy, but Block is the last one that they take out, and we get this wonderful Jerry Conway written philosophical viewpoint, I guess, with him saying, and so it ends. The vengeance we claimed has returned to claim us. It is as I always feared. He who sows the whirlwind will reap a harvest of pain. And those panels, as Block just stands there and allows it to happen because he knows there's nothing he can do. That whole sequence, like you said before, your appreciation of that battle scene is just like, it's what the villains of the story are mentally and emotionally going through, that I'm sure at 10 years old, I was not as cognizant of.
Right.
But now rereading it again, it's like, wow, there's some really cool things going on there, even if it's essentially surface level kind of stuff. But that's, I mean, for a 1979 comic book about teenagers from the future, that's kind of heady stuff for that time.
For a character that is who is he, right? Who is Block at this point? Nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where I wrote. It was because of that scene. I wrote, all right, page 15, those top 3 panels. Geez, Conway, calm down. That's deep. And I was like, this is the type of comic, the grandeur and the dialogue, the drama of it was fading out of comics when I started really reading in the early 80s. But it is still there. Yeah, it's so good. So good. Yeah.
I have a question for you about the ending of this, or
Okay.
part of the ending of this. So after that scene with Block and the battle is over, the subs appear and with Brainy, and they start talking, and essentially everything is explained to us, what each of them did to do this or to accomplish that, right? And Brainy goes, we could probably have done it with only 2 of us, but this way seems simpler. Who were the 2? Who out of the subs and Brainy?
Right.
Who were obviously him.
Maybe he was thinking Color Kid and Night Girl, because they are the ones who really, like, Color Kid blankets everything in darkness so that Night Girl can do what she does. But you still needed Brainy for the force field,
right?
Because that's how they entrapped Lazon. The fire and the ice were really kind of psychological, almost tactics, So, yeah, when I read that, I was like, well, he is supposed to be mad at this point. So, unless that's a way to, that's just sort of like a shorthand for Brainy's characterization.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to decide. Did Conway figure it out that he could accomplish this stuff with two of these characters, or is this just a shorthand, like you said?
I think it's that. So here are some notes that I wrote about trying to put myself like in a young mindset. If this was the first Legion comic, right? These were the things that I think I would have really liked. First of all, the roll call in the first on the first page, with a huge error because they say Shadowlass is in the issue and she's in the cover, but it's really supposed to be Phantom Girl.
Yep.
Which is crazy.
You know what? I have never noticed that after all these years.
Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, there's Shady on the cover. Cool. Love her. She's wearing the, the little Laurel Gann-like bikini thing. Love it. She's in the roll call. And then when Superboy starts talking about the coffins and Brainy's like with the coffins, it's Phantom Girl.
Mm-hmm.
How'd they mess that up? The other thing I love about the roll call, if I was 10 years old, I would look at Timberwolf and I would say, is he related to Batman?
Yeah.
Yeah. So love that. Also, I don't know why Light Lass has blonde hair. I don't know if that's a coloring thing or maybe during this time she had blonde hair.
I think she did. I'm pretty sure she did.
Okay. I tried to think about page 2 and 3, like what would all those words have done to me? I don't know. But Lazon's kind of cool. Love that he can change into kryptonite. Like I would have been Lazon itself, that kind of name. That's kind of like a name I would come up with as a kid. Lazon, right? Blazon, Lazon, like it works. It totally works. Page 5, this issue is just chock full of heroes. That's where we get the other Legionnaires, Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl and Element Lad with all that hair, like if we didn't already have enough heroes, we have them. And then you turn the page and it's more heroes.
Right. Yeah. And
Awesome.
I think that specifically is one of the things that made me fall in love with this is like, I probably didn't understand what Legion meant when I picked this up the first time. Right. And then going through and seeing all these different characters and they have all these different powers and I just wanted to know more and more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big book. You can tell right away it's an ensemble book. Pages 8 and 9, I did write all that tech babble stuff that Brainy was going through and Superboy. That probably would have turned me off. I would have been like, blah, 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 blah. Too many words. Too many words. And then the fight scene is just, from page 12 on. I wrote, holy shit, the subs wrecked the assassins. I really just dug that. That would have totally got me. Little things like you didn't really get a sense of their powers. Like, I don't really know what Neutrax does other than what they say he can do,
Yeah. Well, and I think he's really the only one, Block to a certain degree, but you can kind of guess what he can do just based on his physicality.
And his name, I guess. Yeah. Silver Slasher was cool. You can kind of get that she spins while she slashes in this issue, but the artwork doesn't really help you. I did write here, I liked that Mistmaster called her young cousin, that there's, a real strong connection between these characters. And then the other things that I really liked have more to do with like the Daily Planet Extra at the end, which has a Legion Hembeck cartoon.
Right? I was going to mention that too.
And a Legion question in the Ask the Answer Man about the subs, actually.
Wow. What are the powers of the subs, basically? And we just read that.
Yeah. And it mentions that they're going to appear in this issue. So.
Oh, right. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So for a first issue, I could see this being something that somebody would be like, oh, yeah, I want to read more of that. Like, that totally would have won me over, I think.
Yeah, even beyond just my voracious appetite for comic books at that time. It's like, I obviously that like I said, that cover really caused me to, I'm sure I flipped through it too before I bought it. And but it'd be a real cursory flip through. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But that cover really drew me in. I agree. There's things in here that just would I would think people would gravitate towards and go, yeah, that's despite the fact that it's a part two. Not to mention, so that's the one. I guess that's the one thing I thought I looked this up at one point. Now I can't remember if what I'm thinking is correct. Is this previous incident involving the League, the characters who then become the League of Super Assassins, was that actually in an issue?
Mm.
Because they don't reference an issue number in that explanation, as far as I recall.
Right.
And so, is this just a plot point that they was like, oh yeah, I'm Conway's just I'm gonna create this new villain team, and here's the reason why they want to kill the Legionnaires.
Right.
So,
plus it, Block's homeworld is Dryad, right?
Dryad, yeah,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
They're all from Dryad.
But they say core, whatever the world is. It's not Dryad. It's
Corlon. You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So
I don't know why I thought it was Dryad.
no, it is, but it is Dryad. He is from Dryad. So there's some
right.
Whether they retcon it later or he was, I think in the Who's Who they mentioned they're from Dryad too. Like they're supposed to, so that must have changed somewhere.
Oh, okay. Somebody missed it.
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of research based on that. So this is all just going by the gut,
Yeah.
We're not trying to go deep in these issues. So that's Superboy and the Legion 254. I
have some thoughts about the two issues together. So I'll get to those after we talk about your issue.
Okay.
I saw some similarities there. Okay, so now we get to talk about Peter's first Legion issue, number 304 of the Legion of Superheroes. We're featuring a cover by Keith Giffen and Larry Malstead. It says on the cover, who will be the next member of the Legion of Superheroes? Step inside the Legion Academy and find out. So, well, okay, I'll come back to that. I was already going to go into commentary. So anyway, this issue is written by Paul Levitz. Keith Giffen is the penciler. Larry Malstead, inker. Carl Gafford, colorist, letterer, John Costanza. So, editor Karen Berger. So basically the same crew we've been talking about for several years now.
Right.
At least the first few issues of the Baxter run, right?
Mm-hmm.
But minus Giffen, everybody else that we've been very familiar with. And I will also note, as a tenuous connection to my issue, the executive editor at this time at DC Comics is Dick Giordano. So I love that. Okay. This is the story is titled Siege Perilous, and it opens up with Duo Damsel and Bouncing Boy with the students, the Academy students, and they're talking about Duo Damsel specifically talks about how the Legion is down to 21 members because Karate Kid and Queen Projectra resigned after they got married. So there's a possibility here for one of you Academy members to, and I thought this was interesting, Peter, to file an application to join. So there's like a very formal process, I guess. You have to fill out a form to actually get your name in the hat, so to speak. So their conversations are interrupted by the arrival of Wildfire, who is kind of a dick to Bouncing Boy in the way that he announces himself. But he is followed in by White Witch and Invisible Kid. And they came here to get a little bit of training because they joined the Legion. Like they essentially got a field promotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just based on their involvement with the Legionnaires in those particular adventures. So they're there to observe and to learn. Wildfire runs afoul of Gigi, science police officer. I always forget. I screw up her name every time.
Gigi
Peter, what is it?
Cusimano.
Yeah. And then he leaves in a huff. Then we get this real quick scene between Element Lad, Chameleon Boy, Brainiac 5, and Siobhan Aaron about Shrinking Violet and how the Shrinking Violet that we have been reading about, those of us who read these issues before 304, is not who she appears to be. And they've just basically realized this. So what are we going to do about it? Then we return to the Academy members, and Bouncing Boy has taken the opportunity to interject him and them into a science police situation where there are some alien creatures who have gotten loose. A zoo ship is what Chief Zendak refers to it as. Mm-hmm. And then we get them. Let's see here. We got Bouncing Boy leading the team. We got White Witch, Laurel Kent, and Power Boy, and Invisible Kid. So the four of those are here to take care of the situation. I think they would have perhaps done better with a different group of the team members, but this is a test after all. But they're supposed to round up. I love this, Peter. An earthquake beast, a flasher beast. Obviously, Paul was a little short on naming something, interestingly enough, and then a schnauzerfunt, which looks like just a big. What kind of dog is that, Peter?
Or just like a big lab puppy.
Yeah. So they take care of those creatures eventually. And then we go back to the Legion Academy, where the rest of the Academy members are with Duo Damsel, and they are watching this unfold and ostensibly evaluating what's going on and learning from it. Then we get a short interlude between Magnetic Kid and Shadow Lad, the two. What's that word? Legacy members. So I thought that was kind of neat. The two of them talking about stuff. Shadow Lad specifically says, he's there trying to learn how to be the best I can be, because, with his sister, right? I'm blanking on that.
Cousin.
Sister or cousin?
Cousin.
Yeah. Here with the Legion, he ostensibly is the hero of Telok 8. I'm really showing my age here. I can't remember anything. So Shadow Lad asks Magnetic Kid, "How about you? What made you finally decide to take up playing hero?" And Magnetic Kid, in 2 panels, Peter, showing more characterization than I think we've seen him in the Baxter run, says, "Oh, I guess you never heard of fireballing," which was an incident that occurred several issues before this, right, which is one of my favorite Cosmic Boy spotlights. Okay, then we go back to the Academy members. They're relaxing. We see Comet Queen, I believe, for the first time, at least in this issue. Maybe the first time overall?
No.
Do you know? Okay.
No. Yeah, she's been around before. Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember. But she's with Laurel Kent and White Witch. They're discussing the fact that, Comet Queen can't get over that a real Legionnaire such as White Witch is amongst them. So she's fangirling a little bit. But then the topic of conversation quickly goes to how much of a creep Wildfire is, at least according to Comet Queen.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is her first appearance.
Okay, I thought I had read that.
I didn't know that.
Then we switch to another group of Legionnaires. We got Shadowlass and Timberwolf taking on some organ harvesters near Australia, in the Australian region. And then, of course, just like he did at the beginning of the issue, Wildfire shows up and kind of takes over and insults people and then leaves, which is kind of his modus operandi. But Timberwolf can't be too mad at him because, as he says, not with what he's going through. Back to the Academy and Lamprey and Nightwind, which are 2 of my favorite Academy members, Peter, just based on their appearance alone. Mm-hmm. They're discussing Wildfire. So lots of Wildfire discussion going on here. And then we turn back to Chameleon Boy, basically shoving Colossal Boy and Shrinking Violet into a Legion cruiser, ostensibly for a mission, I believe. Yeah, a priority alert from Imsk. Chameleon Boy lies to them. And Brainiac 5's already in there, and they take off. get a brief conversation between Siobhan Aaron and Starboy, who is deputy leader at this point. Oh yeah, Starboy complains about how he's missing out on what do you say here? Cuddling time with Dream Girl. And he goes inside to have a quick meeting or a meeting with the Legionnaires that are present, which is Phantom Girl, Ultra Boy, Timberwolf is back, Mon-El, and Shadowlass, to discuss who among the Academy members could be joining the Legion to firm up the ranks. And then we get a brief fight that happens between Lamprey and Comet Queen, and Laurel Kent's involved, as well as Nightwind a bit. And they're fighting over Wildfire, and with two of them being sympathetic towards the guy, and of course Comet Queen and Laurel Kent not. Literally getting into a physical scuffle, which was interesting, which is quickly broken up by Magnetic Kid and Power Boy. And then Invisible Kid and White Witch show up and White Witch decides that it's probably a good idea to invade Wildfire's privacy in the interest of this being a form of education, teaching of the special burdens our situations place upon us. Observe. And then we see this forlorn scene between Dawnstar and Wildfire, and she's telling him, it's time for my grand tour of the galaxy, as my mother did, her mother before her, and back to the beginning, to the days when we first went into space. It is a journey of great purpose. Out among the stars, I must find my soulmate, with whom I shall share my life. I wish there was a you inside that fabric and circuitry to kiss Wildfire, but we both know there is not. Take care. And she leaves. And then Wildfire has a very violent reaction to that situation. And the issue ends with Starboy issuing his report, basically saying the Academy none of the Academy members are ready for what the Legion has to go up against. So nobody new joins, despite the promise of the cover.
Well, to be fair, it does say who will be the next member, so that the answer is nobody.
Yeah, sure. Okay, you're right. But, it implies a member will possibly join.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. What'd you think of that issue? I assume you've read it before.
I have read this before. I was well into the Legion at this point. And what I remember about this issue was obviously the characters, and this is one of the similarities that I was mentioning earlier. We get not Legionnaires in here; we get other characters involved, right? So there's that similarity to the two issues. And we did. I don't remember how many times we've seen the Academy members before, but as I recall, this is perhaps the first time that we get a real bright spotlight on them, and we get to learn more about who they are, what kind of characters they are, not just that they have these particular powers and they want to join the Legion.
Mm-hmm. So
there was that, and then of course, what really stood out to me then and now is the Giffen, Malstead, and Gafford art is just phenomenal and a little different from anything else on the stands from DC at this time, given the dotted shading that runs throughout this, the use of shadow and shading. It's wonderfully illustrated.
It's why I always say Giffen makes the book feel futuristic, because it's not just what the backgrounds are doing, but it's everything. It's the art style. Mm-hmm. It's the choice of figures. It's the floating tables. It's all the diagram work on the walls, like just random computer diagram work. Like, doesn't mean anything, but it doesn't have to. It's the future.
Right.
And you don't see Invisible Kid. You just see this. It looks like a smear on the stage, on the page. Like you just took your eraser and made him. He put his body in. You know, like it's fantastic.
There's speaking of that, there's one letter in the letter column in this issue, and this person, David Kaufman, says, "I like the way Jacques is drawn partially invisible. I'll bet that's driving Gafford crazy." So yeah, that was one of the things that I quite enjoyed at this time too, regarding Invisible Kid, because you basically only saw his head and those black stripes going down. I love that. I love those choices.
That's really what it is. It's all choice, right? There's deliberate choice in the artwork and in the Zipatone use, that shadowing effect. I'm fairly certain it's the old Zipatone stuff where it literally was a page of that, and they would go in and use an X-Acto blade to
oh yeah, okay,
to lay it all down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't want to take over because I'll just gush. So this is your corner, so you go.
Well, let's see here. So the rest of this is, just the little tidbits, like, but again, we've talked about a little bit of this already, like the design of the creatures, the zoo animals that they are supposed to capture. I mean, it's so silly, yet it's so much fun. I think that's really the thing I'm reacting to in this issue is the fun of it and the mystery of Shrinking Violet. If this is your first issue, you got to talk about this. The fact that there's Shrinking Violet is not who she appears to be, and they're setting a trap for her. That has got to be an incentive for you to continue to buy this series, right?
I mean, especially to the fact that I don't even know who Shrinking Violet is to begin with, and then they're telling me she's an imposter on top of it.
And when we only see her in one panel,
one scene,
yeah, she's in 3 panels, and you really only see her face in one. Yeah, so who is this person? Yeah, all this stuff. And then you get to the end with that incredible invasion of privacy with Wildfire and Dawnstar. And I mean, that is just great drama, great soap opera, which I think is this issue, I think, really has a lot of the things that we as Legion fans gravitate towards and have for decades. And it's all in this one nice little, how many pages is this? 23-page package.
Rereading this issue for this episode made me feel this issue, if we were talking about this run, this is one of those issues like Legion number 9, I guess it is, or those issues that are one and done and swirl. It's like a bottle issue, right? Bottle episode where it just swirls around the ensemble. Occasionally it'll have like little tangents or whatever, but it's all about them. It's all about the characters and their interaction.
Yes. And
this one being a focus on the Academy, like you talked about, and getting into their heads and the whole reason why I thought Comic Queen, this wasn't her first appearance, is because she's such a fully formed character in this issue, regardless if I know where she's going to go afterwards. When I reread it, like when you reread it, you're like, well, of course she can't be a new character. She's like chumming with everybody. She's got dialogue. She's got an interesting look. This can't be her and I quickly looked it up when you said it. I was like, holy shit, I didn't know that. So yeah,
and she's different.
Yeah.
She's a different character here than she appears later.
Sure. I thought you meant in terms of physicality as well. Yeah. I mean, it's there, like, the germs of the idea, like her valley speak is almost there.
Right.
All that.
But she's got an edge to her. Reading this again now, it's like, I totally forgot about that. And in my mind, she is what she becomes later.
Yeah.
and we've talked about her in some previous episodes. I kind of like this version better.
She's actually going to come up in a few more comics, down the road too for us.
So I thought, just so you know, and
Yeah.
for the listeners too, if we were going to say, I don't know if you were going to ask this question, which is the better first issue if we had to make that
I didn't even
choice?
think of that. I didn't think of that.
Obviously, for me, it's this one. Even though I have so much love for my first issue, this to me is a much better introduction to the Legion and just the whole idea of what the Legion's about, and you get wonderful characterizations. This is the clear winner in my mind.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of unfair because they're, this is Levitt's. He's coming off the high of the Great Darkness saga, issue 300.
This team is just so
Yeah.
well oiled and meshing, and they're just going full steam ahead. So yeah, I totally understand that,
But you're right in terms of the Legion world and what it means to be a Legionnaire. That's being discussed, and like the legacy, like you mentioned, with Magnetic Kid and Shadow Kid, the whole there's clearly some kind of organizational aspect with not only the Academy but with that meeting to try to determine who's going to. I mean, there's rules, right? Like you can just feel that this is an organization. It is not a superhero team, in many ways. And what you said about the artwork, this kind of hit me just now too, is nobody's posing in the other than the cover. Like the battles are battles with the zoo creatures, the girls fighting. It's not glorified. It's just they're just right on each other. Like nobody's posing. They're just standing. They're just Giffen they're just being right
in the scene. Yeah,
they're comfortable with each other. They even Timberwolf's battle with that robot thing, feels very. It makes sense. It's very acrobatic. It's fluid. It's not the typical way that you would maybe think the artwork would be. This is the reason why Giffen is like.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of Legion art, I want it to be like issue 304.
Yes. I had a very similar thought.
Yeah.
Nothing against all these other great Legion artists, especially the ones that we have already covered on the show. But man, this issue is just like the epitome to me of what Legion was in its heyday.
Yeah. And Lido comes damn close.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he absolutely, you can tell he's like studying, but yet still making it his own. The Violet thing didn't speak to me really because like I said, I was like, I don't know who this is. It certainly was compelling, that scene where they're in the tubes and you don't even see their faces practically. Everything's in shadow. And the choice to make it in shadow, and for a new reader, you're like, well, who's that? And who's that? But
go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say Levitz though, he throws it in there, right? Like he says, Brainy's computer mind and your disguise talents. Okay, so that's kind of an idea. Like Levitz is a damn good writer. Like he's even for a newbie, I can sort of guess what's going on.
And haven't we, down the timeline, further down the timeline, we've had these same characters, maybe minus Ron, do something very similar.
Yeah.
Right. I can't remember what issue it was.
It was Brainy and Element Lad. They met up in the middle of the earth in those transport tubes to talk about Sensor Girl.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So it's Levitt's kind of using a formula, but that's okay because it worked.
Well, yeah, because it works for the characters involved. Yeah. I think that worked out very well.
What do you think of? What does this issue make you think of Wildfire? Because I have thoughts about that.
Okay, so I think I have to preface this by saying Wildfire's never been one of my favorite characters, and I know that's sacrilegious to a lot of Legion fans. I think maybe even you included, Peter.
No.
Oh, really? Okay.
No.
because I mostly, if I knew this guy in high school, so to speak, I would hate this guy. But then they totally pull the rug out from under you with that final scene between him and Dawnstar. And I didn't say this in the far too long brief synopsis, but he whispers "I love you" to Dawnstar, and then blows himself up in a very fantastic fashion, where he's basically he's yelling "damn," but it's all in energy form. I mean, you can't help but feel sorry for the guy, and have some empathy for what he's going through. Exactly why White Witch did what she did.
He's a fine character when he's used well, but he's not one of my favorites.
Mm.
But I understand why people really like him.
Yeah.
And I think this issue certainly speaks to it. My young brain was very put off by his character in this issue.
I totally would understand that.
Yeah. Although reading it now, like you say, when you get to that ending, you're like, oh, no wonder. And you also have to think about, like, look at how Timberwolf responds to him.
Yeah.
When he just comes in and sort of quote unquote saves the day by just blustering his way through, and then Timberwolf's like, okay, I'll forgive him. And of course, Shadowlass is like, well, you're going through the same thing. And he's like, yeah, don't talk about that. But then you get to the Academy members, and this is one of the things that speaks to Levitz and Giffen's storytelling strengths, that they're using the Academy again to talk about the Legion while you're learning about the Academy.
Yeah.
And that fight over Wildfire. And some of it is in service to show that Invisible Kid and White Witch are more prominent as members, like that's why they got the field
right.
commission. They're not as, for lack of a better word, young or
immature
or inexperienced.
Yeah.
Impulsive. That's a good word. But it's a way for Levitz to reflect on previous stories that I don't know if he wrote that issue that they're talking about, but
I'm pretty sure they did. I always second guess myself when I say things like that, but I think so.
And there's just a lot of talking and dialogue and interesting. Paul Levitz, that director that I always forget the name of, that he always wants to emulate. It's good ensemble reading. My favorite X-Men issues are the ones where they just sit around and talk. Some of the best Titans issues are when they just are talking or arguing. This is why I like those issues, because of an issue like this.
Yeah, you get a sense of these people who, for whatever reason, gather together to do, it's like a kind of like a sports team, right? You have a common link, but people coming in from all different places and experiences and whatnot, and it's not always about the thing that they need to do or accomplish or react against. It's they are hanging out, and I say this not having a lot of experience with that. Other than say, my brief foray into musical theater or theater in general, local theater in general, right? Where we're coming together for that. But man, there were a lot of conversations we had about whatever, not having to do with the show, because there was a lot of downtime waiting for things to happen, right? So this is so much fun, so delightful to read and get to know these characters better, or in your case back then for the first time,
right? And it speaks to Levitz and Giffen that I immediately can feel what these characters are like, even as a kid. Like, in the very short amount of time, I'm like, yeah, I can kind of get a sense for who they were. Robert Altman, that's the director. I always forget his name, but I always got to bring it up. So I wrote down, I always liked Crystal Kid. I love Crystal Kid's design. We don't even see him do anything.
I know, unfortunately.
I just love the black pants and the crystal the collar thing and his tunic, like so great. Laurel Gann, half naked through the entire issue until she puts on the cape, and you're just like, Jesus, she is just naked.
Levitz really, or not Levitz, Giffen really liked to push the boundaries on her.
Oh yeah. Is it any wonder I love Gigi for the one scene she's in?
Yes. Yeah, so much personality there.
Yeah, really great. These are things I wrote then just on this reread. Quizlet before Quizlet, right? That little mechanical thing on page 2, which is right next to Crystal Kid. I mean, he's clearly one of the students. He's clearly something. It'd be interesting if somebody wrote a story about that little machine. Like, maybe it's not like a Quizlet thing. Maybe this Legionnaire can exist in the world.
Is it
Tellus? Maybe it's. Remember, they go to there's the scene where they're like,
yes,
he's in the room and he can't come out because the atmosphere, like,
oh my God.
So he's talking. Maybe he's talking through this thing.
That totally makes sense.
Wouldn't that be cool?
See, that whole thing confused me because there's that bug-eyed alien, that small creature in the background, in a few scenes. I thought, it confused me because I thought, is he communicating through that machine? But then, yeah, there's that later dialogue that points to that poor other person in that room, right? So yeah, I think brilliant, Peter, brilliant.
That would be great because Lyta was the one who said, I'm going to take this page on page 15 and turn him into a character. And we talked about that already in Tellus' first appearances. But I always was like, this little machine. Now, the bad thing about it is I think in the Who's Who Legion Academy entry, they show this little machine and they don't even name it. They just put like a little question mark or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, so then who is the bug-eyed alien then?
That's another student. Duo Damsel does call him a student, but he's just his own thing. My headcanon now forever will be this is Tellus
yep,
observing, like he's saying on the thing, from his room, and this is just how he observes. He observes through this little thing. I love it. I don't care if I'm wrong. I love it.
No, you're completely correct.
Oh, here's another point I just came up with right now. Nightwind. Fantastic design on her, right?
Yeah.
At least this iteration of her, because she has another version of her previously where they don't quite look the same. Her and Lamprey, like in some of those issues. So, okay, her name is Wind, right? What does she have? Like wind powers, I guess, or something, I don't even know, mystical or whatever. I don't even know. I don't know what it is. When you look at her on page 21, though, and she has that hood, and she has that design on her face, here's another headcanon. When people say that there are no Batman characters in the Legion, I'm now making her a Batman character. I think she's like, you could make an argument that she's like the deep ancestor or descendant of, Nightwing, or Nightwing and Starfire, or Nightwing and Raven, or like she is like a new Teen Titans character. Maybe she's like, a distant cousin in some way. But I don't remember her powers. But when you look at her, and her name is Nightwind, right? So close to Nightwing.
Yeah. Let me interject with this, Peter, because I just looked her up. According to the DC fandom wiki, so her powers is she can create and control winds, but according to this, she made her official debut in Amazing World of DC Comics number 12 as Nightwing.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Weird. See? There you go.
Created by Robert Harris, a Legion fan, in 1976.
Yeah, I want her to be a Batman character now.
Well, now that you're mentioning those characters, you don't get to really see them do anything action-wise in here. In fact, the majority of the Academy members don't really do anything except talk. with each other and stuff, which that's not a criticism. I thought that was interesting that here is this issue that ostensibly the Legionnaires are evaluating them, but then we don't get to see the other members get to do anything really. So that was interesting way to evaluate people, I guess.
I kind of got the sense that they probably did do a mission, but it was off panel.
Sure.
The ones we didn't see, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I love that ending where they're like, it's one of those Paul Levitt's traits where it's a narration up against, a random scene. And this one is a tour through all the deceased Legionnaires. And again, more characters and more questions, It's like, well, who's that? Who's that?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Right. Yeah. What did you think? Did you know these characters at all? I mean, you probably wouldn't have, right?
No.
So who are the, why are they here? I mean, they do say that they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Continually bring up names of dead Legion of Superheroes members and probability of fatal encounter while in Legion service. So there are 4 dead Legionnaires, and we don't want any more. So yeah, it just brings up all these questions, right? And that, like I said, that's something that that I was thinking about in comparing these two. I already talked about some similarities, but they feature non-Legion characters. While what I thought what you said earlier was great, while talking about the Legion, showing us the Legion through that lens, which I thought that's brilliant. We get to see the various characters show off their powers in both stories. Let's see here. Troubled Legionnaires. We got Brainiac 5 crazy in my issue, and Wildfire's tragic love story in this one. At the very least, I mean, there are other things going on too, but those are the big ones. We got some mysteries. We already talked about a little bit about that. Brainiac 5, Shrinking. What's going on with Shrinking Violet? RJ Brand is broke. That's stretching that analogy a little thin with that one, but and then the voyeuristic reveal. So we get that scene in my issue with Superboy saving them. So we get to see, we're seeing a flashback, right? So it's not quite the same thing again, but we get to see what happened, what's happening away from the part of the story that we're in, and of course the ending in your issue with Wildfire and Dawnstar,
right? And
again, I brought this up before, reading some of these issues, or when we're discussing some of these issues. The 30th century, there is no such thing as privacy in that timeline.
You bring that up a lot. Sorry. Like what we're no. I mean, it's a point. When I read that, I was like, oh, Eric's gonna love that.
I'm nothing if not consistent.
Yeah. Boy, I just had another thought. Like when you look at the 4 girls together, Laurel Gand, Lamprey, Comet Queen, Nightwind, Laurel Gand, is it Laurel Gand? Why do I keep saying Laurel Gand?
Laurel Kent at this point.
Kent. Yeah. Sorry. I keep saying, I'm confusing my laurels. Laurel Kent, Superman character. Nightwind, I'm calling it Batman character. Lamprey, she could be an Aquaman character.
Yeah, yep. I was going to say that too.
And Comet Queen you could maybe say Flash, maybe, sort of. Might, I was trying to think of what other Justice League. But...
Her hair certainly evokes the super speed imagery. Yeah.
But that's just me stretching. Yeah. Good issue. Fun issue.
Yeah.
I read that and I'm like transported. I'm sure a lot of it, went over my head as a 10-year-old. But then as you read it more and more with other issues before it or other issues after it, and everything just makes sense. Like they're teasing the Omen story in this, the upcoming Omen and Prophet, because there's a bunch of Legionnaires that go off with Ambassador Relnick. That's what that is. That's
okay.
Because we get the Violet stuff coming up, but then shortly after that, is the Omen story. We get the tease for the upcoming Starboy spotlight, where he's talking about there's a Legion leader election coming up, and that's a whole issue with Starboy, Um, so Paul Levitz, like we find out in the Baxter run, is just planting all these seeds.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This run of, the late 290s into the early 300s is just so good.
Yeah, that was fun. It was fun to read those again. Fun to read the 304 because I hadn't read the other one before. But I always like to say, everybody talks about this. Things like, what's your first Batman comic? What was your first Superman? What was your first X-Men comic, right? Like, that's a big one. And it always boils down to, my Batman, even though my first issue was probably like a Don Newton drawn issue, my Batman turns into Jim Aparo. Like, that's my Batman.
Yeah. Yep.
And you can say that about a lot of things, but clearly coming in on a Levitz and Giffen issue, like that's my Legion. That's why I will always gravitate to those two writers. Even if I love other runs, those are the ones I really, really, really like. So, well, we put a tweet out on Twitter, of course. What was your first issue? And oh boy, did we get some responses. Let's see, the first one, at least on my feed, was from Michael Scheu, Scheu. He says, probably this one or a Whitman reprint of the last Earth War issue. And the issue he puts up is Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes 210. So even earlier than yours.
Yeah.
Where, right, the Soldiers Private War issue. Yeah.
Right.
That one.
So when I decided I love the Legion, I wanted to get all the back issues. That early 200s, like 205 to 215, I was able to find those at a comic book shop that opened up in my little town, and so I was grabbing all sorts of things and learning about the Legion, earlier history of the Legion than what I was reading at the contemporaneously.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, around the time that I was seeing like Mike Grell Legion art. So that's fun.
A Jim Shooter Mike Grell issue. Yeah.
And we got Scott said issue 298, which is, I don't remember which one that is actually.
That is the issue that has the Amethyst 16-page preview.
Right. But the story, it's the Kuns, or Kuns as you say. Yeah. Wildfire, Block, Dawnstar, Invisible Kid, and the Kuns.
Yeah.
A
couple issues after the Great Darkness saga.
Yes. I think is that the one where it's Karlak, the Kund Karlak is on the cover? Yeah,
I think so.
Okay.
You see the back of him and you see the characters.
Oh yes.
Facing us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that issue because of that Amethyst preview. I think I might have a few copies of that issue, actually. Troy Wilson. He's not sure if this is my very first, but it was definitely the point when I started buying the book each and every month, and that is Legion of Superheroes, issue number 273, The Man Who Framed Brainiac 5.
Mm-hmm. That may have been one of the first back issues that I purchased after I started getting into that, as I recall.
That is a Jerry Conway, Jimmy Janes issue.
Glauber Nobrega chose the issue I can't see this. 289, is that I'm trying to see the image here. It's blurry. Okay, yeah, 289, a cold and lonely corner of hell. This is the issue that Shadowlass is referring to in regards to Timberwolf, that whole situation between rather conflated issue between Timberwolf and Saturn Girl and Light Lass.
Because they hugged.
Yeah. Anyway, And DC Multiverse Historian said, Small World, that League of Super Assassins issue was mine too.
Nice.
I was thoroughly lost, didn't provide much context to what had previously transpired, but I really liked it. Yeah, I I understand.
By the way, speaking of Shadowlands, I didn't mention this from 304, but just the way Giffen and who's the colorist again? Gafford.
Gafford.
Yeah, the all black nature of her character,
Yes.
like wherever she stands, it's just you just don't see anything. You know,
I
but like,
loved when they started doing that. And
Yeah.
and then, later they kind of dropped it.
I'm sure
Uh,
that's why she's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris Lydon says he's pretty sure that Secrets of the Legion of Superheroes issue number 3 was his first Legion. That's a great one.
Hmm.
That's where you find out everything about Chameleon.
That's
Chameleon
right.
Boy and RJ Brand.
I for that miniseries, I had purchased number 2, totally missed out on number 1. And so I got 2 and 3, and years later I was able to acquire number 1.
Chameleon Boy. I always forget if he's boy or kid. Yeah, I only had issue 3 for the longest time, and then
Oh, wow.
eventually bought. I didn't buy it off the rack. It was a back issue find.
Well, and Justin says Secrets number 1 was quickly followed by Legion 272, which features Block on the cover.
Oh right, yeah, and that's there's Lamprey and Nightwing. That's the Academy members on there.
Okay.
I'm
I
pretty
don't.
sure.
I had this issue. I don't think I've read it actually.
I think it's them.
It kind of looks like them.
Yeah.
Well, it even says who will be the newest member. Oh my God, they do that
Right.
a lot, don't they?
Mhm. That's probably Crystal Kid too on the cover. Maybe
Oh
the early
yeah.
designer.
Yep.
That's a Jerry Conway, Steve Ditko issue, by the way.
Okay.
Ray H says that Legion of Superheroes 304 was his first issue.
There
So
you go.
we both have someone who he writes, and I was like, wait, these super cool people on the cover are not even on the team. I ran back to my LCS to get all the back issues afterwards with my allowance money.
Yeah, just like we did.
Yeah.
Wait, that reminds me, Peter. I was going to ask you this earlier. So when you first saw this cover and you see these 5 people, including Bouncing Boy is the only Legionnaire on here, or former or whatever he is, reserve Legionnaire. Did you, when you started reading this and realized that he's not part of that group in the, he's not an Academy member? What do you remember what you were thinking in terms of what the cover suggested to you and what you discovered as you read the issue?
No, I don't think I remember any of that. I think because maybe I followed up fairly quickly on like the subsequent issues and then once you read the story, you sort of get who these characters are, Yeah. It endeared them to me, and I always love Montauk Point. I love their base and all that. I adore it. It's like the one quiet part of the Legion world. So
Let's see here. Chris, Otherverse Games. I think this great PZH issue. I don't know what.
post
Zero Hour. Duh.
Mhm.
Okay. But I got a bunch of Legion issues from the pre-crisis and 5-year later eras at about the same time. So I'm not 100% sure I read this one first. It was a strong intro. And so he's showing Legion number 69. I don't think I've read that one actually.
That's during the Archie Legion.
Yeah, I don't remember, but wait, who's that? Who's is that Wade? Is that Mark Wade listed on that?
Tom Pyre, Tom McGraw, Mark Wade, Lee Moder.
Yeah,
Ron Boyd. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I have not read that issue yet. I have it. I just haven't read it.
Al Sedano, who was on our last Tales episode, his first one, and he put a picture of the first one and he says, and never looked back, is Legion of Superheroes during the 5 years later, issue number 21, the first part of the Quiet Darkness.
I cannot imagine the 5 year later Legion being the first and not, I don't know. There's so much that goes into the 5 year later run. And, of course, that was when they were not running around in their distinctive costumes
Not
and
calling each other by their code names.
exactly. And hats off to you, Al, for sticking with it. And I'm not saying that the 5 year later stuff was bad in any way, because I love it. But yeah, that being your first issue, I am super impressed.
Yeah. I don't know if he posted it somewhere else or somehow I knew this or whatever, or we talked about it because we did a recording. When I was out of comics, we posted, it's on our forum. It's on the Legion forum, the Legion Project forum, which you can find at justanotherfanboy.com. When I was out of comics from 88 to 90-ish. Yeah, 88 to like 90. And started getting back into comics because I would walk into like a Walden Books and I found like the newsprint trade of A Lonely Place of Dying, and I was like, what's going on with Robin and Dick Grayson and Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum? And I was like, what is this? Well, when I got into, and then of course like got into like New Titans, because they were going through the whole Titans Hunt thing, like that was just starting.
Oh wow, yeah.
So it was like all this crazy stuff was happening. So I was like, well, let's check in with the Legion. My first new Legion books, because I had stopped shortly after the Millennium. The first three that I picked up that were new on the stands were issue 18, 19, and 20, or at least 18 and 19 of this 5 years later run. And it's the covers with the Dark Circle. It's the cover with the moon exploding.
Oh, wow.
And Venado Bay.
Oh.
And I was like, what the F is happening to my Legion? So, of course, I went back and like, I have in my inventory, all the books that I buy every time I buy books. So you can see, here's the newest 5 years later issue, and here's like 8 other back issues, and then the next one and 3 more. And I was just, so then I went back from issue 1 and read all the way up, and technically The Quiet Darkness was my on the stands kind of first issue for that run too, but I quickly absorbed everything leading up. And I was like, my mind was blown away that this was going on with the Legion. So that's a crazy, crazy first issue, like you mentioned.
Not too long ago, Peter, in real time here, Wayne just replied with 4 pictures, which are covers to Superboy 203, which is Validus is on the cover, looming over the Legionnaires. Let's see here,
Superboy
206.
Yeah.
Feral Lad, Invisible Kid, you're both dead. How can you save me? Superboy says. Issue 209, where Karate Kid is trying to save Princess Projectora by, I don't know, transferring his life force. I've read that issue. I just don't remember what it is. And then, of course, 213. This is part of that run of 200s that I was talking about, Peter, where I found a badly abused copy, but I bought it anyway, and because it spotlighted Ultra Boy, and we get to learn his if I remember correctly, we get to learn his origin story, or it's retold in a slightly different way or whatever. So yeah. So Wayne, did you picked up all 4 at once? Or,
I mean, that issue,
those are your first?
That issue 2 or 3 is when Invisible Kid dies. That's where Validus gives him the squeeze.
Oh, okay. That's a heck of a first issue.
Right?
The death of a Legionnaire. Wow. And then followed up by 206 with both the dead Legionnaires.
I think that's all of them, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so great. That was great that people were that followed up and posted and retweeted, and took pictures, that's great. Like it's clearly a team that is heavily represented on Twitter by various different accounts that sometimes post pictures or talk about, different things or run polls. And that was really cool to have people drop all that stuff. So at the time of recording, Wayne was the last one, as you mentioned. So if anybody posts afterwards, we apologize, or we'll announce it somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, this was fun
Yeah.
and
Great.
different.
Different, right. Casual, not a lot of homework, which is good because we got a lot of homework coming up.
Says you. I did a lot of data gathering, I'll say.
You couldn't even intro the episode.
I know, right?
Well, this was Tales number 12. On our journey to our 5th year anniversary, on our way to our 50th episode. If you combine both the Legion Project and Tales of the Legion Project, this is technically episode number 48. So we are just one away, if you want to, I guess, to issue number 50. So we're going to go back to the Legion Project next episode, and we are going to jump right into the deep end with the Superboy story that we've been talking about for a while. All four chapters, 2 of them in the Legion and 2 of them in other Superman books. So next issue will be for issue number 37 of Legion of Superheroes, and also the 2 Superman chapters. That's what we're hoping to do.
That's the plan, yeah.
Yeah.
That's Superman 8, right? And Action Comics, I forget the number.
Yeah, so do I. 5 something. We'll look it up. If for some reason the conversation goes on a little too long, then we'll only do the Legion issue, and I think the Superman issue is the 2nd chapter. And then what we'll do is for issue 38, which is our big 50th episode, then we'll do the remaining 2 chapters. But we'll figure it out. We kind of want to save 38 just for 38 because it is such a monumental issue. But it may not work out that way.
Yeah.
Action Comics 591.
John Byrne draws the Legion.
Really looking forward to this story. I have a lot of thoughts about it in my head. I think we've both started reading, but even prior to the reread, I probably could spend 2-3 hours just talking about it. So it'll be interesting to, as I cement these thoughts, new thoughts, you know what I mean? And what's so strange about it, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings, the trilogy. By the time I get to Return of the King, I always forget what happens in Return of the King. I've read that trilogy 4 times. Never remember what happens in that last book.
Wow.
I don't remember 38 other than the big points. I really don't remember. I'm like, wait, what happens? I sort of remember. So it's been fun to go through that. I remember the Superman issues very well, but I don't necessarily remember the Legion one.
Oh, we should try to remember to come back to the reason why were you feeling that way? So
it's always the last chapters. Oh, okay. Right? Like, I think it's the same thing with the Universo project. It's whenever we get to the last chapters of things outside of like maybe the Judas contract, I don't remember because it's like, it's rushed, right? You're so keen on the first stuff.
The build up.
Yeah. And then when you get to the resolution.
Yeah.
How many times have I read It? I've read Stephen King's It at least 3-4 times. And then when somebody talks to me about a giant turtle and biting a tongue, I'm like, what? I don't remember any of that. What? I remember the jokes, but I don't. What? Was there a spider? Like, what? What are you talking about? Giant turtle? Huh? So, yeah, it's like, I might be mixing Terry Pratchett, whatever his name is. I don't know. There's some kind of cosmic thing at the end of It that I'm like, I don't remember. So, all right. So join us next time. And if you're reading along with us, get to the Superboy stuff. Send us your comments, which you can do at peter@thedailyrios.com.
Or longboxreview@gmail.com.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
It's not around the house. It's just around the corner at your 7-Eleven store.
Is he recording on your end?
All good.
Okay.
Tales of the Legion Project podcast. Oh, shoot. Do we say the number?
No. We say
Okay.
it after.
Right. God. Take two. Welcome to the Tales of the blah, blah, blah. Man, I'm so sorry. Welcome to the Tales of Legion Project podcast. Good God.
That's what editing's for.
Tongue tied. All right. Welcome to the. Okay, I'm going to rearrange this because this is my problem. I'm trying to do two different things. Welcome to the 12th episode of the League.
I'm going to put all this at the end.
I'm so sorry, Peter.
At the end of the episode.
That's fine. That's fine. You go ahead. Welcome to the 12th episode of the Legion Project Tales. Good God. I've not had any drugs, Peter, I swear. Welcome to the 12th episode of this Tales of the Legion Project podcast. I am your host, Eric.